The Kogas, a pirate ship in retirement that's about to begin a whole new life as a noble floating restaurant in Berlin. But the journey there won't be easy because the Kogas is moored in Lithuania. A risky heavy-duty transport over a distance of 1,000 kilometers. The first stage goes across the Baltic Sea to Poland on board a special ship. From there, it will travel via the River Oder and the Canal to Berlin.
Stop!
The final journey of the Kogas is a mammoth logistical task, and not everything will always go according to plan. Judokrantė, a small fishing village on the Curonian Spit in Lithuania. Here we find the Kogas, the replica of an old Hanseatic cog, built in 2005 as a prop for a film about the freebooter Klaus Störtebeker. Since the film's completion, it's led an unspectacular life as a floating snack bar. The waste from its kitchen has made it a great attraction for fish, and consequently for many hobby fishermen too. In the next few days, it will embark on a journey of 1,000 kilometers. First, across the Baltic Sea to Szczecin, and from there, it will go up the River Oder and along the Oder Canal to the German capital city of Berlin. And there, the pirate ship is to be converted into an event restaurant. Transporting the Kogas won't be easy since the ship weighs almost 50 tons. It's a good 24 meters in length, more than 17 meters high and around 8 meters wide. Berlin entrepreneur Tony Kaiser commissioned this super transport. He's the proud new owner of the Kogas, and for him, it was love at first sight.
I came up here in August and my gut feeling was good. I said right away, that's it, we gotta have this. You can imagine making something out of this that other people will like.
The hobby fishermen in the harbor at Judokrantė will soon be alone. The ship's journey is to begin tomorrow.
In the ship there will be instruction for down to keep it.
Tony Kaiser has bought the Kogas from Evidas Koniekis for just under 100,000 euros. The two men are now inspecting the ship. Evidas explains all the details and special features to the new owner.
There should be water in there. Well, actually, it should be vodka.
Vodka.
Vodka. Vodka. Okay.
The defective compass is the least of the problems. Discrepancies in the cog's dimensions are causing the team much more headache because the current planning shows that the Kogas will only just fit inside the cargo holds of the freighter ships for the trip to Berlin.
No problems, really. We're just checking how wide it is again. Let me measure it first.
How wide?
Damn. That's not good. It's 8 meters. 8.
Sure you measured it right?
Yes, I did. No mistake. It's 8 meters, not 760.
The ship is 40 centimeters wider than planned. In Szczecin, at the latest, that will be a problem because the freighter booked for the passage up the River Oder isn't wide enough for the Kogas.
We got the wrong dimensions. That's a problem. We can't transport the boat like this.
Otherwise, we'd have to saw something off, but who wants to saw the boat up? Or we could lift it out a bit more because it curves inwards.
We can just lower it more at the top. Take the railing off so we can get under the bridges.
There'll be something. Either saw something off or take the railing down. We're a bit stuck.
Before anything else can be done, the two 17-meter masts have to be brought down. For the German-Lithuanian team, this poses a linguistic challenge too.
Wrap it around once, and then you can ease it off with the other one, okay?
No, around.
No, just wrap it around.
All in all, 2 main masts, the bowsprit, and countless ropes have to be disassembled. A Tatra truck-mounted crane moves in. This will have the task of lifting the huge solid timber masts out of the ship's hull. Evidas Kauniekis is getting ready. He's about to climb up the 17-meter mast to fix the crane hook into place. Family members are here to support him. An uncle and his grandfather make sure he's secured with a rope, as the task is not without danger.
I am going to go upstairs and to put the rope that the crane could take it.
The Lithuanian climbs up the so-called shrouds to the top of the mast and attaches the strap. That will have to do. The mast isn't bolted down. It's simply stuck in the ship's hull, but this is the first time it's ever been removed. It looks good. The Colossus slowly starts to move upwards. 600 kilograms are now hanging on a single hook and can only be controlled with great difficulty. If the mast were to fall now, the deck would be shattered, and so would the dream of the restaurant. Carefully, the main mast is laid down on the upper deck and secured. It will have to stay here until they reach Berlin. Otherwise, the ship won't be able to pass underneath the numerous bridges.
Hello! Hello!
It's mainly the previous owners who are taking on the dismantling task. The reason for this is very simple.
They're taking the mast down because it's in the contract that they have to do it, and then bring the ship to the port of Klaipeda. They live here. They know everyone here, and if we did it, it would probably cost 5 times as much because we don't know any crane drivers and we don't know the technology here.
For her journey, the Kogas is now almost 12 meters lower and 4 meters shorter than before, because the so-called bowsprit is also being removed, which is very hard manual work. With her masts, the Kogas would not have fit into any cargo ship in the world. Day 2 in Lithuania. The journey begins. As the Kogas has no propulsion of her own, she has to be towed. But anyone expecting a high-performance tug would be very wrong. The Lithuanians are taking the family's almost 100-year-old fishing boat. Is that really such a good idea? Before leaving, they quickly plan the route. GPS? Not a chance. The first stage takes us 20 kilometers to the port of Klaipeda, where the Kogas will be loaded onto a cargo ship for her Baltic Sea crossing. For the first time in 7 years, the Kog is leaving its mooring in Oder. Weighing 50 tons, the sailing ship is a load that's difficult to maneuver, especially as the old fishing boat has only 90 horsepower and can go no faster than walking pace. The team has allowed 3 hours for the trip to Klaipeda. This will be the last time the Kogas travels afloat. From the next stage on, it will all be piggyback transport. The cutter is clearly struggling with the weight of the Kogas. On her single tow rope, she's tending to drift dangerously to the left and right. In this very shallow lagoon, there's only a narrow channel deep enough for ships, and steering is scarcely possible. Anything coming towards them poses a serious problem. Suddenly, the crew starts shouting abuse at these two hobby fishermen who have anchored their boat in the middle of the channel. Cutter and cog managed to avoid the fishermen, but it was a close call. After 3 hours, the Kogas arrives in the port of Klaipeda. Covering almost 500 hectares, it's the biggest port in Lithuania. Over 7,000 vessels head here every year, but pirate ships are rarely among them. The new owner is now getting a little tense.
When the ship's lifted up, I hope there won't be any nasty surprises because we haven't seen the boat from underneath yet. It's been in the water for 7 years, so the wood's bound to be a bit rotten. But of course, we're hoping there are no holes or any other unpleasant surprises down there.
The Kogas is just an old film prop. It has no classic hull. The wooden planks were only ornamental additions built around a floating steel pontoon. This forms the basis of the ship and is the only thing that gives it any buoyancy at all. Without it, the cog would sink immediately. Safely maneuvering a vessel of this size without an engine is an enormous challenge, not to mention mooring alone. When 50 tons are in motion, they're very difficult to stop by hand. The next task is lifting the cog. These crane belts have to lift the vessel at its most stable point. To do so, they have to be attached to the pontoon inside the hull of the ship. Using the steel crane lugs on the pontoon is the only safe way to lift the vessel. Unfortunately, 2 decks have been built on top of the pontoon, which means that access points now have to be sawn into the decks. Using chainsaws, the team now cut large openings into the wood. Suddenly, a shock. One of the men steps onto a floor section he has just cut out and falls with the running chainsaw still in his hand. Luckily, it switches itself to idle mode. Apart from a bruised shoulder, the man is not hurt. These lugs are welded onto the steel pontoon. On 4 of them, the men now attach the port crane's thick steel cables, and they are now about to lift the Kogas out of the water. Lifting causes enormous forces to act on the vessel's structure. No one knows how the ship will react during the operation. The crane drivers wait for the go-ahead. Lithuania, the port of Klaipeda. The Kogas is now being lifted out of the water. For the very first time, the old sailing vessel is out of its element. Each of the 2 cranes has a lifting capacity of 30 tons. By moving along the rails, they can adjust their position. Gently and without any damage, the Kogas is set down onto the prepared keel blocks. The lifting operation is over. Apart from a few cracks in the wood, everything went smoothly.
Also der Rumpf sieht
The hull looks good. Bit overgrown here, of course, but it's been in the water for 7 years. The wood is deteriorating a bit. That's normal. Water that comes in here runs out again at the bottom. The ship only floats because of the pontoon, and the pontoon itself is watertight.
Both the Kogas and the old fishing boat have survived a hard day undamaged. The first 20 of a total of 1,000 kilometers have been completed. Day 3, the port of Klaipeda. It's 6 in the morning when the freighter Lore Pram arrives. Tony Kaiser and Ulf Golka want to supervise the loading of the cog personally, because so much can go wrong here. The freighter's cargo hold has a capacity of 21,000 cubic meters. Normally, potash, timber, or livestock feed are transported in here, so the Kogas is a very special cargo. Loading begins, and the ship is raised into the air. The cargo hold is 9 meters 50 wide. The Kogas is 8 meters wide. This leaves very little room to maneuver, so the 2 crane drivers have to operate synchronously and lower the boat evenly. After only 10 minutes, the cog is on board. In the cargo hold, the lashing gang now takes over. A crew of dock workers who are exclusively responsible for lashing down and securing cargoes. Their equipment consists of 5-centimeter thick steel cables and an angle grinder. 8 securing points are provided for in the plan, but 4 of the rings are completely rusted and can't be loosened. If the load can't be sufficiently secured, the ship can't sail. A delay seems likely. Helmsman Hans-Jürgen Klöpfer supervises the lashing work.
Look, they've got the first 2 clamping bolts in place. Brute force always works.
In the end, the lashing operation took 3 hours longer than planned. Before departure, Hans-Jürgen Klöpfer checks over the work. Without his okay, the ship will be going nowhere.
For a 30-hour journey in good weather, there's not really much for me to worry about. It's all secure enough. We'll get it there in one piece. And if they can get it to Berlin in one piece as well, we can all have dinner in it.
The cargo is secured. The journey can begin. The Lore Pram's heavy cargo hold hatches, weighing several tons, slide into place and close the hold watertight. As dusk gradually begins to fall, another problem delays departure even further. Without a local pilot, the freighter is not allowed to sail through the port of Klaipeda, and he arrives 2 hours late. The Lore Pram doesn't leave the port until around 6 in the evening. 1,200 horsepower are now finally on their way. So far, the team are now already half a day behind schedule. For the next 30 hours, the cog will be sailing across the Baltic Sea, covering the 600 kilometers from Klaipeda to Szczecin in Poland. Day 5. In the belly of the deep-sea freighter, the former pirate ship has reached Szczecin. The port handles more than 20 million tons of goods every year. The Kogas is now part of those statistics. She's now about to be loaded onto a barge. The 30-hour crossing went without any problems. The Kogas suffered no damage at all, but this is about to change. The next task will not be an easy one for the team. The cog has to be slimmed down significantly. The protruding wooden structures on the left and right have to be removed. The journey to Berlin goes through rivers and canals in a much smaller vessel. So the team starts dismantling the attachments while the Kogas is still in the Lorepram cargo hold. Tool selection is especially important for this.
Organization's half the battle, as my mother used to say. I got this from the boat's crew, from the engine room.
No, it doesn't fit. It's a Lithuanian size, a 28.
You need a bigger one.
30 fits. Super.
I've got another 30 here. I told you 30 would fit. I said that right from the start. 30 or nothing.
And I say you'll have the wood off before you get that bolt out.
The gentle approach, using hammers and grinders, doesn't get Markus Puchli very far. He hopes to make better progress by using a chainsaw. This wasn't planned either. The damage will have to be repaired and restored later, and that won't be cheap.
Applying a bit of brute force works very well, as you can see. More progress in 50 minutes than doing it manually.
The sawing operation has to be interrupted. The cog has to vacate the cargo hold as the Lorepram needs to go to its next assignment. Time is money. 2 Fudd-Minsk cranes, each with a load-bearing capacity of 50 tons, bring themselves into position. While they're lifting, the 2 crane operators have to work in complete coordination to prevent the cog from tilting dangerously. Carefully, the valuable cargo is maneuvered onto the dockside. Around 100,000 euros are hanging here on 2 hooks. Every lift puts enormous pressure on the cog's wooden structure. Let's not forget, the Kogas is a film prop. When it was built, no one dreamed that this ship would be transported halfway across Europe. The 2 remaining wooden extensions on the side of the boat are now removed. In sailing jargon, they're known as chain plates and are extremely strong and solid, which has a lot to do with their function. The masts are fixed to them with ropes, which is why they are secured with countless steel bolts. And every single one now has to be cut off. In the meantime, the next special ship arrives. The Birk B is a 600 horsepower inland cargo vessel. This so-called push barge is 50 centimeters narrower than the Kogas, which explains the slimming down operation with the chainsaw.
Hopefully the attachments will be off in an hour. We had a few problems, a 2 or 3 hour delay, because we had no electricity here in Poland, and then the chainsaw ran out of gas. They're all pretty laid back here, and that's not good because it's raining and we need to load up in an hour. Otherwise, we'll be too late to get out. That's the first problem. And even when all the extensions are off and we start loading this evening, there's no guarantee we'll fit in.
By now, the workspace looks more like a battlefield. The team lays wooden bracing across the floor of the hold. This is intended to protect the hull of the Kogas. It's early evening. The work on the Kogas has taken up a lot of time and energy. It's been raining for hours and the whole team is stressed out. The cog is about to be loaded for the last time, and no one knows whether she will really fit inside the barge. So there's no way the Kogas can be let off the hook just yet. One man on each side of the hold, but wherever they look, it's a very tight fit. Very slowly, the ship is gradually lowered. The crew on the ground are in permanent radio contact with the crane operators. Will the old pirate ship really fit into the hold?
Stop, stop.
No, it won't. The cog is still too wide for the barge. These steel brackets are the main sticking point.
We only need this much space to get onto the floor, and we can't do it because these things here are in the way. In our calculations or on the drawings, this thing wasn't here.
These things are also a problem on the other side. The cog can't be lowered any further. The team will have to improvise, and that's not good news for the old Kogas.
Is it a problem to get this off? It's only a plank.
Should be okay. Matza says there are only nails in it.
Well, prise it up then.
I'll end up in the water. We'll pry it up then.
Matthias Griebel and his men don't have much room at all. They're working on a platform that's only 50 centimeters wide. 2 planks from the outer cladding are also taken off. After that, they're no longer of any use. This is no longer precision work. It's almost demolition. Tony Kaiser and his team take it all with a good portion of gallows humor.
This isn't funny anymore.
Because all the damage caused here will mean a lot of restoration work in Berlin, at a cost of several thousand euros.
It's sad, really, but what can we do? Either we stay hanging on the crane, and that costs 500 euros for every 10 minutes, or we take this all off. What choice do we have?
Meanwhile, the cog has been hanging from the crane for 1 hour. Now, the windows of the former galley have to be broken. Otherwise, they would burst, because it's now clear that when the Kogas is lowered into the hold, it will be squeezed, and this compression will result in dangerous structural stress. The second attempt. Will the old pirate ship fit in this time?
It's gone through here. Is it past? What about the front?
Is it stuck? Is it stuck at the back too?
It's stuck. Yeah.
This steel bracket is still in the way. A Polish dock worker brings an oxyacetylene cutter. There's no more time for subtle solutions. Only 5 minutes later, the bracket is no longer a problem. When the transport is over, this piece of iron will also have to be renewed. 1.5 hours after the lifting operation began, the Kogas is finally loaded into the barge cargo hold. All the bending and braking finally got the necessary result. The cargo fits exactly.
Good.
That's it.
It's now just before 6 in the evening. The crew's relief is obvious. The barge can finally leave the port. The final stage has begun. This will take the Kogas from Szczecin to Berlin, where her future home berth is located. Day 6. The next 90 kilometers are upstream on the river Oder, on course for Berlin. Shipping on the Oder has declined since German reunification. Today, there is rarely any oncoming traffic. Skipper Dieter Schröder and crewman Paul Golka are the only people on board, a small crew for such a large cargo. And they already have a new problem to deal with. At 5 meters, the bridges on the Oder are easily high enough for the barge and its heavy cargo. But in a few hours, they'll reach the Oder Canal. And the clearance on some of the bridges there is no more than 4 meters. For this, the cog is just a little too high. The compass, in particular. Paul Golka has to remove it.
It's only 15 to 20 centimeters, but that's exactly what can get stuck under a bridge later. And it might not just take this front section with it, but half the roof as well.
Yet another component that will have to be repaired later. In addition, the crewman now floods the barge's ballast tanks. They can hold 270,000 liters of water.
Okay, you can start the fire pump now.
With 270 tons of water now weighing down the Birk B, the barge lies much deeper in the water. We'll see later whether the Kogas will be able to pass under the low bridges. Towboat and barge have left the River Oder. The Hohenzollernloch is the first of 4 to be negotiated on the route to Berlin. The lock connects the River Oder with the lower-lying Oder-Canal. Depending on the water level in the Oder, the difference can be anything between 80 centimeters and 4 meters. From now on, the Birk B will continue its journey on narrow canals. Before nightfall, the barge has to reach and pass through the Niederfinno boat lift, 15 kilometers away. This is the largest boat lift facility in Europe. But before that, some unannounced visitors arrive alongside the Birk B. The heavy transport has caught the eye of the river police. The officer steps onto the moving barge. The police check the documentation. Everything's okay, but the officer notices that crewman Paul Golka is not qualified to work here on board.
Regulations demand a skipper and a seaman, and here we currently only have a skipper and an ordinary crewman. This means the transport will have to stop now and can only continue when a qualified seaman can be found who can prove he has the required skills.
So the barge now has to take a forced break and wait for a replacement seaman. But before that, the Birk B is allowed to pass through the Niederfinno boat lift. It's the oldest working boat lifting facility in Germany. It's been in operation since 1934, and today is also listed as an industrial monument. In a gigantic trough filled with water, the barge is lifted upwards. Counterweights provide the necessary pulling power. The weight of this trough remains constant because, in accordance with Archimedes' principle, any ship entering it will displace as much water as it weighs. The difference in altitude is 36 meters. The entire lifting process takes 20 minutes, and then the towboat and barge can leave the boat lift facility. Skipper Dieter Schröder now has to take the compulsory break ordered by the police and wait for the replacement seaman. One hour later, replacement Daniel Klier arrives. As a seaman, he's sufficiently qualified and skilled to work on board. Only now is the barge allowed to continue its journey. In the same night, it reaches the low bridge Klosterbrücke. With the clearance height of only 4 meters 14, it's the lowest bridge on the entire route, and the reason why the Kogs compass had to be removed.
Careful.
There's very little space between the barge and the bridge. Skipper Dieter Schröder also has to keep his head down. And this is only the first of countless bridges on the way to Berlin. Day 7. For the next 32 kilometers, the route takes us down the Oder Canal. 2/3 of the journey has now been completed. In summary, we can say that the old boat has suffered more damage than planned, and the entire transport is a day behind schedule. The wheelhouse on the Dirk B can be lowered pneumatically, as the barge constantly has to pass beneath extremely low bridges. That's no big deal for skipper Dieter Schröder. He's been doing this job for over 30 years. Seaman Daniel Klier is in radio contact with the skipper, and when the bridges are very narrow, he gives the instructions.
So, Dieter, a good 80 ahead? 25 ahead. Yes, we'll manage it. We're in at the front. A meter at port. A meter at starboard, too. All good.
A collision with a bridge would be a disaster. Both bridge and barge could be destroyed completely.
So, Dieter, we're out at the front. All good.
Just after passing under the bridge, Dieter Schröder heads towards the lock at Lenitz. It holds almost 10 million liters of water. This special transport is carrying an oversized load, so it has to enter the lock very carefully. The sensitive lock gates must not be rammed under any circumstances. The water level difference here is 6 meters. Passing through the lock takes just under 15 minutes. The barge now passes Potsdam and continues south along the Teltow Canal towards Berlin. Day 8 of the journey. Towboat and barge reach the capital city with a delay of 24 hours. The Kog now has over 1,000 exhausting kilometers behind it. The entire transport has cost 75,000 euros. Whether the old boat has made it through the journey unscathed will soon become apparent. At the port in Berlin-Rummelsburg, it's to be restored and then converted into a floating restaurant. The Kogas is now about to be lifted for the final time. The team is very tense. The towboat undocks from the barge and then slowly pushes it lengthways up against the harbor wall. There, 2 mobile cranes are already moving into position. They will have the task of lifting the Kogas out of the push barge. Owner Tony Kaiser is already eagerly awaiting the arrival of his Kogas. Each of the mobile cranes has a load-bearing capacity of 220 tons, more than 4 times the weight of the old Kog.
We'll have to lift it out slowly. I just hope nothing breaks. In Poland, we got her in with a centimeter to spare, so I hope she hasn't got stuck in there, and we can get her out again. It might be that vibrations have caused her to get jammed in somehow. I hope not.
Okay.
Has the Kog really survived the journey unscathed? The timbers creak. The Kogas seems to be stuck. The cranes briefly stop lifting. When it was loaded in Szczecin, the wooden hull was compressed. Any damage caused then will come to light now.
Yeah, it's got to come over the edge and it'll work. Okay with you? Yep. Good, we got it. Just don't drop it.
At least there's no new damage visible. The two cranes now keep the 50-ton cog suspended. While the towboat pulls the barge away from the dock. Then can the Kogas be lowered into the water? A premiere. Berlin's first and only cog is actually afloat. A huge relief for Tony Kaiser, the boat's proud new owner.
It's floating, it's not sinking. That's the first big challenge successfully overcome.
How do you feel now?
Good. Just love to sail away in it right now, but it can't sail.
After its long transport odyssey, the cog is in miserable shape. It's hard to imagine that in less than 11 weeks, it's supposed to be opening as an event restaurant. The team really has its work cut out for them. Directly after arrival, the derelict vessel goes into dry dock. The dock's ballast tanks are flooded with water. When it's pumped out, both dock and ship rise up out of the water. 10 weeks later, the Kogas is afloat again and restoration is in full swing. The condition of the ship, however, was far worse than assumed when it was bought. In the past 9 years, the rain has gotten in everywhere, and in many places, the wood has rotted. The entire upper deck has to be renewed completely. In fact, the restaurant should have long been open by now. The owner's disappointment shows.
We never thought it would be so porous and rotten in the end.
The upper deck is now getting a waterproof roof. More than half of the railing is being replaced. But without these repairs, the ship would never get through the official approval process. It would be far too dangerous for anyone to be on board. The wooden extensions on the hull exterior also have to be completely renewed. They were removed in Szczecin to save space. Making them to measure takes almost a week. But after 6 coats of oil and wood stain, it's almost impossible to tell the difference between the new parts and the old ones. 2 weeks later, and there's still no fixed opening date. The team wants to erect the 2 masts today. They've been sanded down and freshly painted. The 17-meter mast is brought into position in persistent pouring rain.
Stop, stop, stop. Go on. Good. Another 8 inches, yes. Yes. Come on. Come on.
No, it's not there yet.
Yep.
Now a bit further.
Bit further. Yeah, that looks great.
Finished. The Kogas is complete once again. After a total of 12 weeks, the conversion is completed. Today, under its new name, the Gode Wind will be opening as a restaurant.
Today, we'll ring in the new cog era in Berlin with 3 gong strikes.
3, 2, 1.
The new Gode Wind has almost 100 seats. All the chairs, the tables, and the floor have been sanded down and given a fresh coat of varnish. There's a completely new kitchen, and of course, on the menu, there's fish. The conversion cost another 90,000 euros, but nevertheless, Tony Kaiser is relieved.
All the pressure will come off over the next few days once the restaurant's up and running. It was a really big deal. And it's been going on for nearly 4 months. First month, pick up the ship, transport it over here, then the conversion work, then all the registration stuff, and now the opening. It'll be a few days before I can drop everything and let it all sink in.
The Gode Wind team is ready to go. After a 1,000-kilometer heavy-duty transport from Lithuania to Berlin and 3 months of restoration, today the Kog is the capital city's brand new attraction.